Aloha and welcome to the video. So I've been working on this project for quite a while, which is why I've been gone or I haven't posted anything in a little bit. A client reached out to me and requested that I make a custom piece for her husband for their anniversary, which I thought was really cool. The original style that they sent me that they were kind of interested in was a custom sword that I had made previously. And their husband being from Hawaii, I recommended that maybe we do something kind of a combination between a more traditional design and that sword style. They were in favor of that, and so I started working on this piece. So this is not fully a traditional piece by any shape, but it does mix a lot of traditional designs into it, or at least the Hawaiian designs that I heavily use, as well as making like a sword style piece. So the first step was just obviously sketching out the rough design, and then I wanted to have a lot of contouring lines, and so the back end of the blade, I wanted those to come to teeth, have like a ridge line, and so there's going to be a lot of contours and a lot of lines on this piece. I don't want it to be just a flat, blank, boring piece. So there's quite a bit of design work, even though it does look a little bit simplistic. I'm just being careful so that I can get everything in parallel and looking even on both sides. And then what you see me doing there, where I cut the end of that off, is I was kind of just playing with reducing the size of the blade just to see if I can make it look a little bit more proportional. But keeping track of center is very important, and you'll see me do this quite a bit with a lot of my pieces. Sometimes I'll draw a center line, sometimes just a few dots, but just anything so I can help keep track of center while I'm hawking away lots of material. So this piece right here, the raw wood was probably somewhere around an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter, not an inch and a quarter, maybe an inch and an eighth. But it's a very thick piece, you can see there, so there's tons of material that I need to remove. I potentially could have resawn it with my bandsaw. I could have shaved off some, but I wanted to leave it thick on purpose, just so that I can make sure that the contour lines that I'm wanting to put in are a little bit easier to keep track of. When you have a thinner piece of wood and you have a long edge, the longer the blade is, the harder it is to make a sharp line. You still can do it, it's just a little bit more of a challenge, and so that's why I went ahead and left it quite a bit thicker, so that I'm hoping that I can have a nice clean ridge line that goes from the base of the blade all the way towards the edge. And then I will be putting tiger shark teeth into this piece, so it'll be lashed with tiger shark teeth. And I'm going to be putting an inlay as well. I haven't, as of this point in time, I hadn't yet decided where or what inlay I wanted to use. I just knew I wanted to include that into the design to represent the client, because they're the wife and father and 2 children. And so I wanted the design to reflect that family unit. But the first steps here are just rough shaping, cleaning up the edge work, and getting ready to sand, which takes a little bit of time, but it's not too bad. Now, there was an absolutely enormous amount of sanding I had to do on this piece. So before I put in the teeth and do any of that work, I'm going to be sanding it all the way down to 320 grit. If you don't know too much about sanding, what that means is the higher the grit number, the finer the sandpaper. So a lower grit, say a 40 or 50 grit, is going to be very aggressive. The grinding discs that I use in the beginning are usually 40-50 grit, and so I'm making my way up with the sanding discs, going from usually 120 to 150 to 220, and then all the way up to 320. But because it's such a large piece and I have a lot of contouring lines, which you can already see starting to take shape, it just takes an enormous amount of time to make sure that I don't remove those lines keep them as bold and as straight as I can and try to keep everything in line and clean. Once I get it sanded down to 220 grit, which is what I am now, I would go ahead and put in the groove for the teeth. Now before I can put the teeth in, I need to finish sanding down to 320. I just wanted to put the groove in before I sanded down to 320 because the blade was starting to get thinner and I wanted to gauge how much thickness I had left and material to remove. But as of this point in time, it's unbelievably light compared to when I first created it or when I first cut it out. And so it's already feeling a lot better in the hands, and I'm enjoying the way that it's looking and the way that it feels. Now for the inlay design, what I decided to go with was a Nihumano pattern. The Niho is a triangle, so shark teeth in Hawaiian. And the pattern that I'm going to do is I'm going to have two large Niho, two large triangles that will represent the parents, and then two smaller Niho triangles which will represent the kids. And then for the parents, the larger Niho, the larger triangles, I'm using mother of pearl. And for the smaller ones, I'm using the abalone pearl. And then I'm just shaping them into a triangle utilizing my grinding wheel there. And that works out pretty well. The next step here is going to be carving in, or rather cutting in the inlays. And I'm mirroring the pattern on both sides. I thought about doing it on just the one side, but I didn't really like the aesthetic of that, and so I decided to do it on both. And then another reason why I wanted to have the smaller triangles be below the larger ones, other than the obvious of, you know, children following their parents, is that way in the future, if they have any more kids, there's plenty of space. Now, whether or not they'll be able to get more inlays put into it is questionable. But in the event that they do, it is there and it's available. So all I do is I cut out the inlay, I trace around it using a marking knife, I hog out the center using a Dremel, and then I clean up the edges using my chisel set, and then I use super glue. I'm using the CA glue. It's a medium viscosity, so medium thickness super glue. Once I have all of those set, I can go back with the metal file. I have to do this first. This is to get the pearl flush with the koa. The pearl is a lot harder than the wood, and so if you just try sanding it down with the sanding disc, the softness of the pad will result in the sanding disc kind of folding around the pearl, and you'll get a very wavy, bumpy feeling. And so I first make the pearl flush with the koa wood, and then I go back with the sanding disc, like you see me here, and finish putting in those touches. So now I have the piece sanded all the way down to 320 grit. I have the primary inlays set up at the top. I can go ahead and set the teeth. Now the tiger shark teeth are large tigers. These are about 1 inch to 1.25 inches. And I'm going to set them with epoxy, which is what I do with most of my pieces. Not a lot, just a little bit, enough so that it holds them in place while I drill the teeth and lash them. And then I'm using my Dremel with the tungsten carbide bit to drill them. And then for the holes that go into the koa wood, I use a spacer, just whatever piece of wood as a spacer to mark the holes so I know how far away from the edge they need to be so they stay in line. And then I start the holes with that nail that you saw so that when I go to drill them, it is easier to have a straight drill. At this point though, I was almost ready to oil the piece, but I didn't quite like how heavy the design work was at the top of the piece. I felt like it needed some balancing, and so I'm adding in some insets. So these won't be inlays. An inlay is flush with the material around it. An inset is proud. It's exposed a little bit. So if you look at it from the side, it exposes. I'm using these larger abalone pearl insets here for the handle. So this will act as a nice contrast between the pearl at the top, the pearl at the bottom. And I like the idea that there's two of them, one on each side. And so again, that will signify the parents, the handle of the piece. I thought that would be kind of cool. And so I'm doing just some final touch-up sanding. Again, this is sanding up to 320 grit. I thought about taking this one to 420 or 400 grit, maybe even 600, but the 320 grit's pretty good. I only needed the 400 grit in a few different places where I needed to clean up some of the edge work or some excess glue. But other than that, once I got it sanded to 320 grit, get all the scratches out, all the lines in place, I can go ahead and oil it. I use tung oil as the primary oil. I was super excited to oil this piece. I knew it was going to be gorgeous just because of the piece of koa that it came from. I've made a few other pieces from that same stock. They were beautiful. And man, was this just gorgeous. It's like a flame along the blade. This looks awesome. I love how this turned out with this really deep contrasting chatoyance between the darker and lighter grains in the koa. Just absolutely gorgeous. I love the way that this looks. Now that it's oiled though, I only have a few more steps left. I need to lash the teeth, and then I need to lash the handle. And lashing the teeth is kind of boring. It's one of my least favorite parts, but it does make it look really nice, and it's the primary structural hold for the teeth. This view is kind of hard to see it. You'll get a closer view here in just a second, but it's a little bit strenuous. It just takes time. You just have to be patient. But other than that, once I finish lashing it up, I will be finished with this piece. And here is the finished piece. Man, does this look awesome. I love how this turned out. I love the contrast and the complement of the inset at the bottom of the handle to the triangle Niho pattern inlay at the top. I think it looks beautiful. I love all the contours, the edge work. It actually feels really nice in the hand too. It is meant to be a two-handed piece, but you could definitely wield it with just one hand. I will be testing this piece out, but I'm gonna first take a look at it in the natural light so we can see that beautiful shimmer against the sun. Look at that flame. That just looks so awesome. I love this piece. Man, I enjoy most of the pieces that I make. Occasionally I'll make something that I don't like, and so I won't send it out. I'll start over. But most of the pieces that I enjoy, a part of me wants to keep them, but I do love being able to share the art as well, so I will be shipping this one out, unfortunately. Before I do that, however, I am going to be testing with it. Man, does this feel so good in the hand. It's just really light and easy to wield. I'm going to test it first with my ballistics gel, and then I tested with just slicing through some water bottles, which you saw in the beginning of the video. Well, if you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like and a comment. Go ahead and share it. Let me know in the comments below what you'd like to see me make in a future video. I have a lot of cool projects planned, but I love to read the comments and see what ideas everyone has. Mahalo Nui for all of the great support that I get. I greatly appreciate it. If you didn't like it, let me know too. I do enjoy the feedback. And I will see you on the next video. Aloha.